Your uncle does it, your boss does it, your kid does it. From dice to fancy horse racing at the Durban July, place a bet, win or lose money. This is gambling in South Africa, and I'm worried about it, especially online sport betting. We're going to talk about why you and I should be worried. But first, I want to tell you about how we got here. 1948, the official start of apartheid, white minority rule in the country. Later, Bantustans are established, aka homelands. These were quasi-states for black people, away from white South Africa. They were divided up by ethnicity. For example, Tswana people had Buputa Tswana as their nation. 1965, gambling is banned in South Africa, except horse racing, which would later become quite huge. After about 13 years of this, a guy named Saul Kersner sees an opportunity and opens a casino in Buputa Tswana. White people finally have a place to gamble, have some adult fun, and all that jazz. It's now 1994, the official end of apartheid, and the ANC is in power. 2 years later, the Gambling Act is updated. Casino gambling is back, baby. 6 years after that, the South African National Lottery, aka the Lotto, is launched. And it's supposed to help South Africa with funding for social development. It would later be marred by cases and cases of corruption. 2008.
When you go into the internet, you find all these illegal sites everywhere. So we are saying that this thing needs to be prohibited. We need to take a responsible stand.
But sport betting online is legal. The main companies come to play, and they start advertising like crazy. We are officially mainstream and normal. 2024. This bank statement shows up online. A lady spent her mother's 100K on Betway. People start sharing their experiences, and we learn a lot about the subject. I find it baffling that so much money is being spent and lost in secret. The story of gambling in South Africa took quite a dramatic turn in 1994. Black people could freely participate in the economy. What came with that was a growing audience for the industry. Horse racing in particular just blossomed and turned into like major calendar events of South Africa, such as the Sun Met and the Durban July. These happen annually, and they're a big deal. They're all about bling, fame, and of course, sport betting. Today, the industry is worth over 30 billion rands a year in South Africa. And South Africa is the largest gambling market on the continent. For context, our population size is 4 times smaller than the largest population of the continent, Nigeria. And even they can't beat us when it comes to spending on gambling. With a relatively medium-sized population, we have to think about why it is that people are so attracted to this industry, so attracted to gambling. In other words, why do people gamble?
Currently, economy is better. How can I say economy better? So, omolo omungwa sama na unka grand ranta tingi kayo.
Salaka wina tsona tse ke di jalang tsa dinomoro tse.
Wa ikutla bjang tsatsi le?
Ha o ne di thabile thata. Ke di betšhitse ka tšheletenyana e nyane tse stampa tšhelete ntšhi. Ke pateletse bana ba sekolo transport ya sekolo. Ke kry-ile tšhelete ya ho ya mmerekong. Ka reka dijo ka mahala.
So I'm just trying to taking chances. Maybe I can win. The reason why people are betting too much nowadays because some people they are not working, so they depend with the betting so that when they win they can support their families. No, I wanted also to increase my money because the money I have it is small. So if I bet and I win, I can manage to do whatever. Yeah, saleka itshwara mara na isa pateli team ya teng. Karim patetse negi betitse ka 5 rand. Yempa 125. Yeah, I was so happy because my money is back and I get extra money on top of that. I buy a voucher for $30.
Yeah.
And then out of that voucher, I share, okay, maybe today I play 5 rand, I check the teams for then the team gets a thing, okay, I play 5 rand and then out of that 5 rand, maybe Engaya, Buma, 600. Sometimes you lose, but not always.
So you plan this thing?
Yeah, what you have to draft it.
For the majority of South Africans, life is not easy. There's high unemployment rates. The economy is just not doing well. It's tough to just make a good living. And so gambling becomes one of those things that you use as a tool, as a means to an end, to try and make life a little bit more bearable. And that makes sense, right? When things are not going great, you start taking some chances. I can see why that is attractive. I can see why that makes sense. But then came online sport betting.
Now every fan can play too. Online now and enter our world of
12 million
All right, think about it. 24/7 access, wherever you are. In some cases, you don't even have to pay for the data to access the apps or the websites. Of course, this thing is going to blow up. In fact, it's become more popular than your traditional brick-and-mortar casinos. A big reason for this popularity is the seemingly unrestricted advertising. It's just everywhere. There's no way you haven't seen a HollywoodBets or Betway advert this year if you live in South Africa. It also raises questions about potential overexposure. Since it's so easy to get access to go online and gamble, it means regardless of how young or old you are, you may be on this thing. And that's a little bit concerning. Later on, I'll tell you about a country that experienced the same thing, tell you about what happened to their youth. And I think that's also happening to ours, slowly but surely. And so as a result, I decided, hey, this little hunch of mine needs, some evidence. So I went out to talk to some young people.
How old are you guys?
I'm 21. I'm 20.
I'm 18. Yeah, just normally sports betting, just play on the boxing, combat sports.
Okay. I normally just use my bookie, run it through a VPN, and then I can use American servers right now.
So online?
Online completely.
Nah, mostly like Spanish already.
Betway, Aviator.
Is it popular? Does it work?
Yeah, it works. Oh, you catch big money with that. I'm telling you, catch big money. I once missed 17K because of network.
I just heard people mostly talking about online podcasts, etc., and then I decided perhaps I could try it.
Yeah, given the edge, I get a blue YouTube, if I things like so I was like, okay, let's try this. Get a bar at the edge. I'll play. And when you guys are at school, there's a lot of people doing it as well. Yes. We
even have a group that we do it together. And sometimes we give each other signals or, okay, start putting it now. Let's try now. We input money together on the same account, you understand? And then we say, okay, this money, we take it.
Wait, the youngsters have chat groups where they talk about this and they're doing it together. It's becoming quite social. You watch together with your mates. Might as well throw in an app there that lets you bet on a game. We should be concerned about the fact that there are high schoolers at 16 even who are doing this right now, like online sport betting. Right? And you may be wondering how they're able to do it if there's age restrictions. Like 18 years old is when you should be able to start. Well, think about yourself when you were 18 or younger, how easy it was to do pretty much anything you wanted to do online. Unless, of course, online was not a thing when you were a teenager. If this is how youngsters, teenagers, are engaging with this industry right now, we need to have a closer eye on it before things get out of hand. And mind you, I'm not even talking about gambling addiction yet. It's my thing. If you go to a casino and there's a problem, or someone has a problem with their behavior regarding how they engage with this thing, you can see it or even feel it, right? And then you can do something about it. With online gambling, that's completely different. It's not so easy to police it. I'm not the only one who's thinking about this or worried about this. The National Gambling Board in a recent bulletin talked about this. And this is what they said. Some of the concerns that have been raised regarding online gambling include that the identification of problem gamblers become far harder. The challenges raised with regard to problem gamblers is exacerbated by the fact that online gambling encourages more frequent use, given that it is more accessible than land-based gambling facilities. Remember when I told you that in 2008 there was a bill to ban online gambling? Well, in practice, things play out a little bit more different. And it seems like when it comes to online sport betting, it's difficult to even police the industry. So when I decided to study the subject, I had to do some research, checking out journals and news articles and documentaries. And I have to admit, it was quite difficult to find something decent written about the subject matter until I came across this article. In this article, this lady talks about the regulations and young people, the impact on the youth, that is. And I thought, I have to find her. Hey, Rufaro, I finally found you.
Hi, Taviso.
I've been interviewing people, right?
Yeah.
But while doing this, part of me thinks, am I blowing this out of proportion?
No, absolutely not. I mean, gambling has been there, since time immemorial, right? I think what has made it a lot easier, or what has been maybe a specific entry point for young people specifically, and not just in South Africa, but, across the continent, right, is the gamification.
Gamification is the use of game-like elements in non-game contexts to make activities more engaging and fun. This can include things like earning points, achieving levels, or completing challenges. It's often used in education, marketing, and workplaces to motivate people and improve participation.
So I'm a regular South African walking about doing my thing. Why should I be worried about this?
Gambling addictions are an actual legitimate, valid thing, right? Beyond what folks who are gambling or who have gambling addictions lose in the process, right, as a result of this addiction, it's also the people around them that are affected, right?
ba bang ba tlala ke basadi akere o tloa a le kwa hae mosadi a mo romile grocery tsa mo reka grocery ko ntlong ha o ne dijo ha o ne selo o mo fa tšhelete a fitlha mo sebakeng sa gore a ye pele dishopong a go reka dilo tse mosadi a mo romileng tsone a ye ko o tla mo pele e re ke betšha.
You look at the online space, right, because it is a newer space, there isn't as much regulation, or at least the regulation isn't clear. It allows these companies to really run rampant. I think what you're going to be seeing is very big predatory pushes by these companies, because they're going to be trying to maximize on the time where none of these policies or these regulations are really existing or are being enforced in a very material way, right? And that's going to have, of course, far-reaching consequences for the broader public.
It is clear that online sport betting is a whole other ball game to what we know as gambling. And so we need to think very carefully about how to protect our society, how to make this thing safer. I have to reiterate, I'm not saying it should be the end of gambling. No. We did something about alcohol. While not perfect, we did something. We did something about tobacco. While not perfect, we did something. And if we can deal with alcohol and tobacco to the extent that South Africans couldn't drink or smoke during the lockdowns, we can deal with online gambling. So there are a couple of things that we need to think about here, right? There's the online side of things when it comes to gambling. There's how pervasive this industry has become, how easy it is for even underage people to engage in online gambling. And then we also have to think about the regulations. How do we regulate the advertising? Where these guys appear, how they attract people. Where are the lines? Where are the boundaries? Where are the limits? There is that aspect of gambling addiction. I haven't talked much about it here, but my interview with Rufaro gets more into that, because she actually talked to people who had some nasty experiences. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, please check out my full interview with Rufaro, also on the channel. I'll put that in the description below. Before I let you go, I want to show you something. There's a country that has shown us the worst that can happen, right? And they managed to deal with it, or at least they're starting to deal with it.
Australia represents about 0.3% of the world's population. We're a drop in the ocean. But get this, we have close to 20% of the world's pokie machines. Turns out we're the biggest gamblers on earth. We lose $24 billion a year. That's more than 30% higher than the next in line, Singapore.
Now, this is what I'm worried about. I even found this article where they claim a 10-year-old was gambling. I don't know about that. I mean, how, Sway? But anyway, there are some lessons we can take from Australia. There are some lessons we can take from Uganda even, right? In Australia, for example, it was very clear that people of lower socioeconomic status were being targeted, those places in particular, right? And we have to think about that in our regulations. When I say where they can show up, how they can show up, this is what I'm talking about. If you visit the townships of South Africa, you will see how pervasive this has become. visit a simple shopping complex and there should be 1 or 2 betting shops. Look at this place. There's a bank. You don't have enough money. You go next door, get some credit, and then, you can go gamble that money. So while gambling is a large and pretty much broad issue, I think we should start with what's happening with online, because this is the most recent. This is the scariest for me, and I think you should worry about it as well. You will also notice that my interviews were only with men, right? That was pretty much intentional as a result of how around the world, basically, the people who are engaging in this the most are young men. We have to think about that. We have to think about what that means for regulations, what that means for our society. Again, this video is about the social implications of gambling. Anyway, if you want to hear a little bit about what women have to say about the issues in our society, check out this other video about how South African women are responding to the global birth rate decline. All right, cheers.